The Six Nations is well underway by now, but big news breaking this week is that South Africa have plans to try and join the Championship come 2024 after the Rugby World Cup in 2023. I've done some investigation. This is what I've found about why they want to join, how will that impact the competition as we see it now, and how will it impact World Rugby. So stay tuned to find out more. Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. What do you think about this? Subscribe and leave a like on the video. Let's get into it. So what is being proposed by the South African Rugby Union and also CVC, who have a big input in this? We will talk about CVC a little bit more later. South Africa to join the Six Nations, that is the proposed deal, but to create a seventh nation. So Italy would keep their place in the Six Nations. Lots of talk recently about whether Italy offer enough to the competition, whether they're good enough for the competition. Georgia possibly knocking at the door, but it would stay as a seventh nation, and South Africa to join after Rugby World Cup 2023, that is in France. So they join in 2024, and that would be their first competition. According to various reports, these negotiations have been going on for a while, ever since CVC bought a stake in the Six Nations, and they have stakes in a lot of other competitions. Why would they like to join? It's a good question, but one of the big reasons is money. Now, each country receives a certain amount of money for taking part in the Six Nations, and the amount you get, it depends on how you do in the competition, but also how much money you give to the competition. So, Italy in 2019 received £15.9 million for their part in the Six Nations, although they came last. Wales, who won the Grand Slam, therefore got an extra £5.5 million. They've got £20 million exact for their participation in the Six Nations. Scotland got 15.6 million. Ireland got 15.6 million as well. France got 18 million, and England got 19 million pounds. So money is clearly a big motivation. There's a lot of money in there, and that's certainly going to be a motivation for South Africa. You also just have to look at attendances. Attendances in the Rugby Championship are not what they used to be, although you can get some really high attendances in some places. So there's 89,000 for the game between New Zealand and South Africa in South Africa recently, but the lowest was 29,190, with an average attendance over last year's competition being 38,000. So that 89,000 was a huge anomaly. You're not going to see it often. So only 38,000 turn up for these games on average. When you see in the Six Nations, apart from Rome, pretty much every stadium is full for every single game. Twickenham 80,000, Millennium 74,000, Aviva 50 odd, Murrayfield 50 odd thousand, Stade de France 80,000 again. It is always full, and that is the envy of these countries, that these countries can sell out their stadiums and can. They're pretty expensive tickets. You know, if you're looking for a Wales ticket, you're probably looking at a minimum about £45 or thereabouts. And for England, it's even more expensive. So there's a lot of money in it. And the fact that they can sell out an 80,000 stadium means they can charge those prices. But no, it's still going to sell pretty well. And so for South Africa, that idea of, right, if we can get an England or Wales to come to us and we can sell out a stadium and get 50-60,000 people to pay £40 a ticket, then maybe we can get people out to watch these games. The other big factor is the history of the Six Nations. Let's quickly talk about the history of the Rugby Championship. The Rugby Championship started in 1996 for the Tri-Nations, so South Africa, Australia and New Zealand, but in 2012 Argentina joined to make it the Rugby Championship. So the competition isn't really that old, and it's certainly something that doesn't have as much history as the Six Nations does. The Six Nations started in 2000, but the original idea for the home nations, which is the first format of this Six Nations, was in 1883, so it's the oldest international competition in the world. And it obviously has a lot of history. Lots of people tune into it who may not watch rugby other times of the year, and so this is certainly something that they want to part of, because the viewership for it, also as I said, the attendances is huge here in the UK and France and Italy compared to that of the Rugby Championship, and they're getting that on a consistent basis, which is not happening in the Rugby Championship. It's also something that happens every year, and so you're certain to get that revenue in every single year. Another big major factor is TV and time zones. The TV is a massive factor for how people can watch these games. So if you were living in the UK during the Rugby World Cup in Japan, some of you may have got up at 4 in the morning to watch some of the games, and I certainly got up to watch a lot of them games at 4 in the morning. But if you're living in New Zealand and you want to watch the Six Nations, you may have to get up at 2, 3 in the morning to see the early kickoffs, and then probably the latest kickoff is kicking off about 7 in the morning. So you're missing a lot of the games. But if we're talking about South Africa, South Africa's time zone, so Cape Town is only 2 hours ahead of London, ahead of UK time, and 1 hour ahead of Paris and Rome's time. While if you talk about Buenos Aires, so Argentina in the Rugby Championship, so that is 5 hours behind Cape Town, and it's over 12 hours behind Auckland in New Zealand. So you can clearly see that what is the attraction for a New Zealander to get up to watch New Zealand against Argentina and maybe 4 in the morning, knowing you're probably going to win, or for South Africans to get up and watch a late kickoff or an early kickoff. That is a challenge. With it being in the UK, so if it's a 3 o'clock kickoff over here, so South Africa, let's say, are playing Wales, a 3 o'clock kickoff, it's 5 o'clock over in South Africa. It's a very reasonable time to watch the games, and it makes a lot of sense as well for players travelling back and forth with jet lag, etc., player recovery. That's not going to be such an issue. The other big issue would be with the TV is that it's New Zealanders who are really watching the Rugby Championship. That's where the most viewers are coming from, with viewership, especially in Australia, really going down in recent times. As also Australia aren't doing great at the minute, so that could be a big issue for them. But also in South Africa, except for last year, viewership was going down, but they obviously won it last year, went on to win the Rugby World Cup. There's also another big issue, guys. It is Japan, Fiji and Georgia. Where does this leave them? There's been lots of talks about possibly Japan and Fiji joining the Six Nations, which those rumours are quickly being pushed away. But these rumours about South Africa are not being pushed away so strong. But Japan and Fiji would make a lot more sense going into the Rugby Championship. Obviously, there's some quality players from both nations, and Fiji especially. If they could just get the right investment and be put against top level teams every single year on a competitive basis, then you feel they would develop and do better. So Fiji are certainly options to be pushed into that bracket, as well as Japan, who had an incredible Rugby World Cup, hosted the Rugby World Cup, show they can play attractive rugby and show that they can play against the big boys as well. So that is certainly an option. But if South Africa left, that would open a gap for one of them teams, and you'd assume it'd probably be Japan at the minute who would fill that gap. But there's always those talks about Japan and Fiji. And of course Georgia knocking at the door. They constantly win the European Rugby Championships, which is the competition for Tier 2 nations. So you got Georgia, Romania, Spain, Germany, a few other teams in there. But Georgia have won it for the past 12 years or so very comfortably. They beat Spain on the weekend comfortably, and they actually leapfrogged Italy in the world rankings. So a lot of talk about there. What does that mean for Georgia? Georgia certainly can't join the Rugby Championships, but what does that mean for them? Does that just say, okay, you're going to stay there for the next 10 years or so? And that, I'm not sure about that. And finally, we need to talk about CVC. CVC is a private equity firm. They bought a lot of stakes in many different leagues and many different competitions across the world. So in March 2019, the company initial offer for the Six Nations was to have a 30% share in it. That was rejected, and it looks likely like they're going to have about 15% in total. So that means they'd have 15% of the total rights to the image rights and the sales and everything like that. So it'd mean they have a massive impact. Although 15% doesn't seem like that much, it is quite a bit, and they will make a lot of money off that. They also have a stake in the Pro 14. They've put £120 million investment into that league. Each union, so Wales, Ireland and Scotland, get about 35 million each, while Italy and the South African unions also get a bit of money. Of course, South Africa have two Pro 14 teams in the Cheetahs and the Southern Kings. Cheetahs did pretty well last season, Southern Kings not so much, but there's still 2 South African teams in there. So they've also got a stake in the Premiership, in the English Premiership, the English Gallagher Premiership, which is a 27% stake there for about £200 million. And we know there's a whole host of South African players playing in the Premiership right now, and you got the likes of Faf de Klerk and many others who are playing there, who are taking the league by storm, in fact, and they're really cementing their place in that league and making a difference. And with the fact that South African players can now play outside of South Africa and still play for South Africa, it makes you question about is there more freedom going on, and what's going on there. So those are the reasons why South Africa may want to join. There's probably a whole host of other reasons, so definitely let me know that in the comments. If you know any more reasons, let me know if you're in favour of it or against it. My personal opinion, I'm against it. I think the Six Nations as it is works, but I would be interested in a promotion, but not for South Africa to get promoted into it. Give opportunities for lesser teams in Europe. Georgia have been knocking on the door for the past 5-6 years, you'd have to say, and so that could certainly be something that we look at, that the team who finishes bottom, they get a playoff with a winner of the European Rugby Championships, which would probably be Georgia or Romania. Russia are knocking at the door as well. They didn't disgrace themselves in the Rugby World Cup, and they would play a playoff, and whoever wins that playoff goes into the Six Nations. Whoever loses drops down into the Tier 2 competition. I'd certainly be in favour of that. Would that happen? Because money-wise, so let's say England had a really bad Six Nations, finished bottom. It's unlikely, of course, but finished bottom. Could you see Italy play Portugal, Lithuania, places like that? 500 people at the game, and it's just not making the money. So that's another big issue, but that's another talk, that's another chat, another discussion for another video. So let me know in the comments down below your thoughts on this one. Would you like to see South Africa? Would you not? Subscribe, leave a like. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next